What is up, YouTube fam? Robbie C here. Welcome back to another Disney Lorcana video. Today we are talking starter decks. That's right. For several of you, you were getting into Lorcana and you did what most people think is the right play. You went to the store and you thought, I need a deck. And they have these decks pre-built. So why don't I go ahead and buy a deck? And at the time of releasing this video, we currently find ourselves in set 7 of Disney Lorcana, Archazia's Island. We had the Ruby Sapphire list released featuring Belle and Beast, and we had the Jafar Amethyst Steel package. I wanted to go through, for those of you who have gone out and purchased a starter deck or are thinking about purchasing a starter deck, what is a way that you could buy one of these starter decks and then upgrade it pretty quickly in order to generate and create not only a playable deck, but in some cases, possibly competitive deck. With all that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into the content. We've gone ahead and imported this whole list into Dreamborn.ink, and we have the whole starter deck sitting in front of us. And one of the first things that you're going to notice when you look at the starter deck is, first off, it's heavy characters. We're going with the Amethyst Steel list because I think that it is the closest to being upgraded for the lowest budget option, because traditionally a lot of the Amethyst cards can be pretty affordable and have crazy impacts, because one of the biggest things that starter decks are often missing is draw. We play the first few turns out and then we just run out of gas and we have no cards in hand, and then we're just, both me and my opponent, if we both have starter decks, are just in top deck mode waiting on what the next card may be, and that can be rather boring. We want to make sure we have one of the key features of a good deck, and that is a draw engine. But also, one thing that we want to look at is, what is the identity of this deck? So I wanted to look through and see, hey, what is the deck going for? Is that this number right here on the right talks about how many different copies of the card are in there. Not the costs, it's the copies. And you'll notice when you look through this deck that there is not one singular card that we have 4 copies of. Because in Disney Lorcana decks, we can have 4 copies of the same card. And because of that, usually your more consistent cards are the ones you're looking to lean on, or what you're going to want to try to put a 4 of in. If they have powerful effects, you definitely want to put 4 of in, because it just raises the odds and statistics of you not only seeing one of those cards, but multiple. When you have a 1 of, like this Araya Guidance Seeker listed here, it can be something that you're not going to see every game, even if you do have a bunch of card draw in your deck. Usually only put in there for very niche circumstances, or traditionally it's an inkable card that's going to have a heavy effect, but you just can't afford to have too many of them in there. A great example of this is inside of Emerald. There is a card called Bend to My Will, which is a 7-cost uninkable action that makes your opponent discard their entire hand. Very, very powerful effect. Unfortunately, if you find it early on in the game, it's very hard to do anything with it, and it's not a great top deck or a draw option on turns 2 or 3 when you're playing. If you do have 1-ofs, they're either very particular, or you want to make sure that they're inkable so that they can, at worst case, find themselves as fueling your game to get later on. Now, circling back one more time, what is the identity of this deck? Playing to the board. It's trying to be aggressive. Steel is traditionally a color that wants to play to and control the board, and purple is drawing you cards and traditionally has some larger bodies in it as well, in order to swing and have hard elimination options sitting in front of you. Another way that we're going to control the board is through Jafar, newly crowned. This is one of the key features, key identities of the deck. It's the one on the box, and it revolves around the idea of illusions. During your opponent's turn, whenever one of your illusions characters is banished, you may return that card to your hand. Now, what are illusions? Illusions are new in set 7, and they are these bigger static characters that have the ability to vanish upon them. Whenever an opponent chooses this character for an action, banish them. But when I have a Jafar on the board, those illusions are actually going to come back to my hand, so the low cost big body ideas of them are really going to hold on. Now, some of our key illusions here are obviously Raja, a 2-drop 3/3, which is a pretty big body. Iago, the giant spectral parrot, who's an evasive, so very tough to challenge. But most importantly, the giant cobra ghostly serpent. When you play this character, you may choose and discard a card to gain 2 lore. If the purple engine is cooking, we're going to be drawing cards anyways, and because of that, we want to make sure that we can discard 1 to gain 2 lore, keeping that burn strategy going. How are we going to modify the deck? We want to put in some different cards, but we have 60 already. 2 things we want to look at in shaping the deck to sort of create an initial idea. The thing that we want to make sure that we're paying attention to is all of the cards that are 1-of inclusions inside of the deck. Do we actually think that we need those 1-of inclusions? Do they help push the deck, or are they just taking up a space that by dropping that 1-of, we can make another card that we're going to be using more often, more consistent? For instance, I think that this Jafar Aspiring Ruler, when you play this character, chosen character gains Challenger 2 this turn. then it also quests for 2, is a really powerful card and has a big effect. So we want to make sure that we get another one in there. But I scroll down to Madam Mim, this 6-drop 4/5 that quests for 2. Whenever this character quests, exert chosen opposing character. I'm not very often going to find myself coming to this spot. So we're going to go ahead here on the deck edit list, and we're going to go ahead and remove her, and then go up to this Jafar, and we're going to go to 4 of 4. We have Fa Zhu, the war hero. Whenever one of your characters challenges, now, I think this is a cool effect, but I'm not entirely sure that it's one that we need in the deck right away. So we're going to pull him out for now and see if we come back to him. Raya Guidance Seeker, during your turn, whenever cards put in the inkwell, this character gains resist 1. I don't think that we necessarily need that. I'm going to hold off on banishing any of the illusions in the Jafar because I do think that they create a really cool identity for this deck. Rolling down to items, we have the training dummy. Chosen character gains bodyguard until the start of your next turn at the cost of playing it for 2 ink and then spending 2 ink to exert it every time. This feels like a card that we just don't want to be doing this. We don't want to be spending that. The Amethyst Coil, during your turn, whenever cards put in our inkwell, we can move a damage counter from chosen character. I think this is a cool effect. Unfortunately, it's uninkable, and we have to make sure that we're keeping an eye on the uninkables. So we're going to go ahead and remove those as well. And then the Retrosphere, we spend 1 to play it, 2 to then banish this item, return chosen character or item with 3 less to the player's hand. I think it's another one that we don't necessarily need. Very merry on birthday. Each opponent puts the top 2 cards of their deck into their discard. This one is a little confusing to me in that I'm not really sure, like we don't have a lot of mill, which is like burning through their deck options. So we're going to go ahead and remove that as well. Double Trouble is a removal spell. Deal 1 damage each up to 2 chosen characters. I think this is cool and a really nice idea. However, I often wonder if I was really trying to lean into it, why would I not just go with Twin Fire that I do know is uninkable, but when I play this is 1 damage to 2 chosen characters and it's inkable. I can deal 2 damage to 2 different characters at the cost of discarding a card. And by the time we tweak this, we hopefully are going to be drawing a lot of cards. So Twin Fire might be a better option if we really want the removal. So instantly, we've gotten rid of 14 cards in the deck and we still have somewhat of a shell. Now in this starter deck upgrade, I want to make sure that we are clarifying that my goal here is to build a solid deck. There are ways to order cards online and very affordable options, so it's not like I'm going to scrap the entire deck, but we'll see that there are cheap cards out there that we can easily slot in and out, and we have some core to get started here that we can really lean in on.
All right, so Editor Robbie here. Wanted to take a quick second to say that we do end up replacing quite a few of the cards, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a priority corner in the upper left-hand corner so that if you don't want to order a ton of cards, you can order just a few of these and then replace as you go. And 1, 2, 3, 4 is going to be the priority order, with 4th being, I think, the final cards you need to add, fully replace and get the upgraded deck if you don't want to make the order all at once. But let's try to dive back in with making the best deck possible for these illusions.
Now, when we look at purple, one of the best things about playing purple is that it has some of, if not the best 1-drops in the entire game because they all essentially replace themselves. We have Diablo, the Obedient Raven. That's a 1-cost inkable. Whenever this character is banished, you draw a card. We've got Churnabox Followers. Whenever this character quests, you may banish this item to draw a card. And the Magic Broom Illuminary Keeper. Whenever you play another character, you may banish this character to draw a card. All of these replace themselves while still creating a board presence. Now, go ahead and add 4 copies of each of those 1-drops into the deck. We'll come back and see if we want to stay at that price point, but for right now, we'll do that, and we've got a nice solid with 12 cards. We know we're going to see a 1-drop lots of our games. Now, looking at the 2-drop category, we have this illusion body, and I think illusions are just going to become more powerful as time goes on. So I don't think that we necessarily want to get rid of Raja as our 2-drop, but there is another powerful 2-drop that we want to look at. So we'll go ahead and add a 2nd Raja in there. I'm okay with Razul for right now. We might lose him. And Helga we'll come back to because we might be high on uninkables. So let's head over to the bounce package, which is one of the other big reasons that you're going to play purple. When you play this character, you banish her or return another chosen of character of yours to your hand. Madam Mim comes in a variety of different shapes, and this is just a really powerful card to help control and create that bounce going back and forth. So we're going to go ahead and add 4 of Madam Mims in here. And then Madam Mim Fox is one of the strongest cards in purple, I feel. She has Rush, which means that the turn you play her, she can challenge in. She also has that bounce ability that comes from Madam Mim. We're going to go ahead and add 4 of those as well. You can see we're starting to watch this price increase, but we're still very much inside of the budget realm. So keeping the idea in mind of our curve, we have 12 1-drops. We have currently 13 2-drops. That seems a little excessive right now, but we know we're going to want the snakes, and we know we want the Raja as well. So why don't we go ahead and pull the 2 Helga's out just to keep our uninkables low, which is going to create more options for us later on. Once again, Razul we'll come back to. I think Giant Cobra being inkable and being one of our ways when we've top decked this and we feel like we're stalling out, we can quickly move the needle forward. So because I think that it's a card that we're going to want to see a lot, we're going to go ahead and move up and add a 4th Giant Cobra in there. We know that we just added the Fox in, so we don't necessarily need that many 3-drops, and we know we really like this Jafar as well. King Hubert is a vanilla 3-drop as well, so we can go ahead and pull a couple of him out. We'll keep the idea of the parrots going because I think that we're sort of leaning in on this initial version to the idea of the illusions requiring some answers. We'll throw a few more of these in, but you'll see here in a second that the 4-drop is probably the most contested spot in a Amethyst deck. And we do have some other options that are pretty solid when it comes to just building decks in general that we want to make sure that we're including with these 2 colors. P Games Referee is a steel card. He's a 3/3 body, 3 cost to play. He's inkable. And when you play this character, opponents can't play actions till the start of your next turn. Let's think about what our deck's trying to do. We want to play some illusions that are bigger statted bodies at a lower cost because they have the weakness of when they're targeted with an action, they get banished. But what if Pete was able to protect them because on the next turn, they're not able to actually play any actions? Really solid synergies here that keeps our big illusions alive to then so that we can either challenge the board that they're creating or we can just continue to quest out. So we'll go ahead and add in some Petes. There are 2 Merlins that we have to talk about in the 4-drop as well. The first is Goat. When you play this character and when he leaves play, gain 1 lore. This is an easy way for us to sort of close out and finish the game faster. When you pair him alongside Madam Mim, it's just a deadly combo. And then we also have Rabbit. Rabbit, when you play this character and when he leaves play, you may draw a card. To show you the synergies that exist, we have Merlin Rabbit right here to draw cards, but let's take a look at the subtitle because Hoppity Hip is the name of his ability. And Madam Mim, the name of her ability is Chasing the Rabbit. They were just meant to be played together. So we're going to go ahead and add the rabbits in as well. I'm not entirely confident that they're going to stick around. We'll add in 2 more Jafars. And we'll talk about this is that just because you can, it's not always best to just go 4 ofs all the way across the board. Sometimes you have to tweak those numbers. If you have an illusion character in play, you may draw a card. And we have 4, 8, 12 illusions, so I do think that the Treasure Guardian is going to allow us to draw a little bit. It's a 3/3 that quests for 2. It is conditional, so most likely we'll end up keeping the rabbits over the guardians. But if you're looking to start sort of cutting budget that we'll talk about here at the end of the deck, I think that this would be an upgrade that you can make later. This would be just fine if you're willing to upgrade the Iagos and the other illusions as well in the first place. And just like that, we're down to 54 cards. Now, I do think that we're a little heavy on characters right now because while our characters can draw, we do want to have a couple other options in there. And if you've ever heard of Pot of Greed or heard Yu-Gi-Oh talk about Pot of Greed, play a card, draw 2 cards. And we have a song that does exactly that. Friends on the Other Side, you play it, it is draw 2 cards. You can sing it with pretty much most of your deck. The top half of your deck can all sing this card and it lets you draw cards. Really, really powerful. Another one that is really sneaky good to keep the burn going is This Is My Family, a character. It's another song. It's a 2-drop song. So when we say 2-drop, it means that a character who costs this much or more can sing it for free. You can exert them into sing it. Gain 1 lore, draw a card. This is really powerful. I think this is going to be a really cool one. All right, so we're coming in at 62 cards. So where would we start to make some cuts? You could just simply cut 2 of the 1-drops. Churnabox is a pretty solid answer because worst case scenario, it deals 2 damage when it does attack. Diablo can be really good because it forces them to answer and you can just keep turning it sideways over and over again and when it's banished. But because we have Jafar, Aspiring Ruler in here, when you play this character, chosen character gets Challenger 2 this turn, you can play Jafar, buff up the Diablo, and thus give it a 2/1 stat and let it swing in and do what Churnabox is going to try to do while still banishing something on the other side. The tough part about Churnabox is that it has to live to your next turn to draw a card. Diablo, when you play it, unless it gets bounced back to your hand, it's always going to draw you a card. Magic Broom on the other side, whenever you play another character and you banish this character to draw a card. So you could play it and pop it the same turn. Traditionally, you're going to play it, quest with it at the start of your next turn, and then when you play something else, you pop it right there as well. So I think what I would do is I would go ahead, if I were trimming from this list right here, still trying to keep the idea of the illusions and sort of playing to the board idea, I would go ahead and I would drop 2 of the magic brooms to bring this down to a 60 card deck with 9 uninkables. Now I understand that we still have this 1 of action in here. We said at the beginning, why do we have a 1 of action? I think that most often we're not going to need this effect. If we need to, we can always use this as a secondary option to sort of clear the board, and we play this, it exerts all their characters, and we swing in with our illusions and get things going. Once again, this is coming in at the time of filming this only at $40.46 to buy the extra cards. So I do think that it is very much still inside of the affordable range if you're looking to create a more competitive type deck. And I get it that we have replaced several of the vanilla cards and things that are inside of the traditional deck. And I think that's just sort of the nature of Lorcana, is that they want to introduce so many different characters and things like that, that there are just cards that are okay. What I really like about this is that I think it leans into the Jafar really having this illusion army in front of him in order to help push you over the edge and have control of that board. Now, the last mention that I'm going to throw here is I just want to show you a list where I tried to stay under the $50 range. So for only $10 more, I wanted to make sure that we had something that might even be more competitive in a much more aggressive or aggro style deck. And we tossed some of the illusions while still keeping others in order to stay lower to the ground. In fact, the weekend that I'm filming this, there was a tournament over in Austin, and in Austin, Texas, the list that won was very similar to the one that I made, and it's only $50. You can see here that we have 4 goats sitting at the top. That is the end of our curve. It's 12 1-drops, 22 drops, and 24 3-drops, as well as the goats to close it out. We're really just trying to stay low to the ground, ink as fast as possible, and play these cards out. We only have 8 uninkables, which means very rarely are we going to end up in ink trouble, because pretty much anything we're coming across in our hand can be used. And while we still have several of the cards, we did get rid of the Jafars and the Yagos and really all the illusions except for Giant Cobra, because Giant Cobra is still going to do a great job. We threw in Mr. Smee, Bumbling Mate, because he is just a solid 2-drop, and really what's fun here is that at the end of his turn, if we don't have a captain in play, we take a damage. And so he's going to be taking damage because we don't have any captains in the deck. But when he gets low, you can simply bounce him back with Madam M Snake or bounce him back with Fox, replay him after that, and still have that damage going. It can be really, really solid when they're just not taking care of or trying to trade into your Smee. They'll regret it because it's just going to keep getting you lore as the world goes around. We have Goat, but we also have Budget Goat and the White Rose. When you play this character, you get 1 lore. Now, we also have 2 burn songs that we've really added in. This My Family. We've had this before. Gain 1 lore, draw a card. But then we also add in Gathering Knowledge and Wisdom. This is just a 2-cost action that, boom, we get lore. And then last but not least, Amethyst Chromacon. When you play this card, you may turn it every single turn. Each player may draw a card. So while, yes, you are going to be giving your opponent cards at the same time, you're so low to the ground and you're trying to play so fast, it doesn't matter. And then last but certainly not least, Benja. We're in a currently heavy item meta. And so when people are playing Sapphire coils that are making it easier for them to remove your characters, and then they're playing Emerald coils to make things evasive, Lucky Dimes to make things get even more lore. It's just wild how many items are out there. People playing Popsicles that you don't want to deal with. You can play Benja. He's a 2/3 body that is inkable, and he quests for 2. And when he enters the board, you may banish chosen item. Very, very powerful. Very cool effect. This is, at the time of recording this, it comes in at $43.44. And like I said, this is just, if you like these colors and you like connecting with them, I understand that this isn't necessarily right on par with the starter deck, but this is an easy upgrade in terms of if you like those colors and you want to move into a more competitive deck. I think this is certainly one you can take a look at. So with all that being said, that's going to wrap it up for today's video. I hope this is helpful. And let me know if this is a format that was helpful. What can I do differently? Or if you're like, hey, I want you to really stay within the boundaries of upgrading these decks. Upgrade the decks in 15 cards or less. What would you do? Definitely some options. Even looking at this budget option, there is Maleficent Biding Her Time that I would also look at including the deck, but she's $4 a card currently. I think personally you could drop maybe Friends on the Other Side or maybe your Mr. Smees to throw in Maleficent Biding Her Time as a 4th 1-drop option for the deck. Trying to make sure that we stayed super budget friendly category. You could even look at Genies if you want to spend the upgrade upgrade. So many options out there. You can always invest more and try to find more competitively viable cards, but we're here to make budget-friendly options so that you and some friends can get there. And I think with this $43 deck, if you showed up with it to your local league, I think you would definitely compete, if not take several matches and win quite a few by just controlling the board with your bounce and quick lore. So thanks so much for watching. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Please make it fantastic for someone else too. But for now, we're going to leave you with the lore.